this community in this project that we work and put our hearts to. Before I start, there are some ground rules that I want to go over with when the clicker wants to click. All right, so how many of you actually have a full-time job or who's worked in a full-time job? Okay, that's the majority of us. Has worked or is currently working? Okay, so when we go to work, usually your employer or your boss says, okay, if you're ready to work, you need to clock in at the time of your shift and you have to be ready. So that means what? Wearing your ID, be on time, wearing your ID, being in the front, or if you're in school. So these are ground rules that I want to go over with all of us so that we're actually ready to learn and gain education through this program. So number one is punctuality, okay? Punctuality means coming on time. Attendance is being taken. Every time we have these meetings, you do know that you have to attend a certain percentage in order for you to graduate. So we have 8 lectures, and throughout those lectures, your attendance is taken so that you would be accounted for in every single, class participation so that you can actually graduate from our program. 2 or third is refraining from individual discussions. So we want to make sure that we are actually attentive whenever Dr. Deer or whoever is presenting and actually focusing, okay? Finding your seatmates, your group mates. I want us to actually develop a group that motivates each other and reminds each other. When you're back, if you remember back in school, you have that one person that you text or you have that group chat and you say, hey, what time is the lecture at? What time is our class? Where is it being held? Is it in room 202? So it's the same thing. We are in a setting where we are learning. Take notes. Bring your writing material. This is very crucial information that is not really being taught in the educational system nowadays. Wear your name tags. So some of us may know each other already, but others we don't know. So wear your name tags because we want to know you by name. We want to know who you are. But it's okay if you forgot it, that's fine. But the next meeting, please wear your name tags. Sit in the front. I know some of us are a little shy, they like to sit in the back, but we really encourage you to sit in the front because your attention will be much more there. Clarity of the information, you can see more clearly as well, so always a lot of benefits sitting up in the front. And of course, enjoy what you're learning. I've learned that when you're in school, studying for exams, quizzes is actually much more easier when you're actually interested in the information that you are learning. So it's not really a stressor per se, but it's something that you're actually enjoying. And as you enjoy, the more you'll be amazed of what you're learning. So before I hand over the mic to our speaker for today, I wanted to introduce to you guys a group of people who really spends time in serving as well. And we have been just a group of friends in the beginning, and with the motivation and with the direction of using the talents that we have to really serve those around us. And one of those talents is through music. And so I wanted to call up my friends here, and we have prepared a song for you all to enjoy, but also be blessed by it. So we are HYS, the Haven Youth Singers Sound, and we have a song prepared for each and every one of you.
I'm rich, I'm free. I want to tell the world that I'm Happy I got Jesus right here in my heart.
I'm alive and living, all because I'm forgiven. I've got Jesus
Right here
in my heart. Now if you want real joy within your life, and you want to be free from care and strife, then give your heart to Him today. He'll show you the only way to be rich and free, and so completely happy. I got Jesus
right here
in my heart. I love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all the happy faces, praising God in heavenly places. For the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. I just keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. He gets sweeter and sweeter as the days go by. Oh, what a love between my Lord and I. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. When I first fell in love with Jesus, I gave Him all my heart, and I thought I could not love Him more than I did right at the start. But when I look back over the mountains and the valleys where I've been, and it makes me know that I love Him so much more than I did then. I just keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. He gets sweeter and sweeter as the days go by. Oh, what a love between my Lord and I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again. He gets sweeter and sweeter as the days go by. Oh, what a love between my Lord and I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over and over again.
Are you ready for a second song? It's better than what I'm going to do here. But it's true, isn't it? If we have a passion, a purpose in life, it makes all the difference. To love and to be loved. Big issues. Health is the best wealth you can have. When health is gone, wealth is meaningless. So you're in the right spot, and I hope I can help you to recognize that health is not so much a matter of, it's really a matter of choice more than anything else. It's not a matter of chance. For most people, health is a matter of choice, especially as we get older. And so welcome to our program here where we're trying to look at the cause and cure of modern killer diseases. Now I want to give a short review of what we did yesterday because we have some folks here that are here for the first time. So, and also it's a good review for all of us. They always say repetition is the mother of learning. So I hope you don't mind if I just go over it very quickly. Oh. Can we go back one? That film was very meaningful to some of you, but you said it didn't come through yesterday sound-wise. So we're going to run it one more time. It's a long film. It takes 60 seconds.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide. The average Canadian will spend their last 10 years in sickness. Change your future at makehealthlast.ca.
To me, that's one of the most powerful 1-minute spots I've ever seen. It puts it right to us, doesn't it? Where do you want to be? Right? And I told you last night, you don't want to be a Canadian. Right? But we are probably doing worse than most Canadians because many of us spend our last 10, 15, 20 years. We actually begin to die when we're 55, 60. And then they bury us at 77. And then you have had about 15, 20 years of vegetation, right? And what we want to do, we want to live as long as we can, as healthily as we can. And I mentioned to you yesterday that this famous man, Dr. Dennis Burke, Dr. Colin Campbell, he said, America is declining in health significantly. As a matter of fact, America spends twice as much as the next ranked nation in the world on health care. And yet we're only ranking number 46 in life expectancy among nations. Something wrong. And he said there are 3 reasons for this decline in health. It has to do with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Okay? And so I want to talk to you briefly about the role of diet in the cause of these common killer diseases that we cannot cure with medical care. We cannot cure heart disease. We cannot cure diabetes. We cannot cure hypertension. We cannot cure arthritis. We cannot cure very well obesity. But we can do it. And so yesterday I talked to you about that we are the chairman of the board of our own health. And we talked about the fact that we had very little heart disease 100 years ago. Today we have 3,000 heart attacks a day. And we see here number 30 there, 30%. 1/3 of all the deaths in our society are today related to cardiovascular disease, that's heart disease, and stroke. Folks, that's on the test. So take note. Okay, about 1/3 of all the deaths in our society today are due to heart disease and stroke. We also have on the test that only heart disease was so rare that maybe you had less than 10% of all the deaths in those days were related to heart disease at best. It was very, very rare. Today, it's very common. And then you have number 2 in yellow, cancer. And number 3, please write this down. Cause number 3 of death in America is prescription drugs. Folks, be very conservative in how you use medication for the treatment of chronic disease. They do not cure chronic disease. They just put a Band-Aid on to make you feel better, and you think you're okay, but you're not, because the disease continues. We talked about breast cancer has developed in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years dramatically. Used to be 1 in 20, now it's 1 in 20, 1 in 7 women that will be developed breast cancer. We talked about diabetes. It's on the test. It's increased by 700% since 1945. Difficult to find in World War II. Today, 700% more. 7 times more common. Diabetes. In the last 30 years alone, we've seen an increase by 3 times. When you deal with diabetes, you have to deal with kidney disease, heart disease, visual problems, blindness, hearing loss, men 45, 50 years of age, impotent. It has a very common pathway. Diabetes accelerates, here's the word, atherosclerosis. That's a narrowing of the arteries. The arteries anywhere in our bodies. And we talked about the fact that we have how many miles of blood vessels in the body? 60,000 miles, that's right. And then we talked about what happened to the American chairs. They've gotten bigger and bigger, especially in the last 20, 30 years. Not because we needed more wood to be used up. No, because you got the point, right? And with the obesity issues, look at this. You have more diabetes. These are all cousins of obesity. Diabetes is a cousin of obesity. Heart disease is a cousin of obesity. Arthritis is a cousin of obesity. Sleep apnea. Sleep apnea. People sleep in different bedrooms, husband and wives, because they can't take it. He's dying any moment. And yet you can take care of that in 3, 4, 5 weeks and months by making some changes in terms of weight loss. Sleep apnea is directly related to excess weight, especially weight that comes in this area here. Is that good news? You can get back together. Same marital bed. Lots of benefits for some people. And please also note obesity relates to breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, cervical cancer. And people sometimes have the idea that, well, we live so much longer today, that's why we have so many diseases, because these are diseases of old age. Not true. When we said yesterday that it's the fact that our children, the great children, in 1900, every 5th baby died before the age of 1, and that lowered the life expectancy, so that it appears today that we live longer because we have eliminated those early deaths. And we said, here's the test question again, we probably live 8 years longer today as a 65-year-old man in comparison to people 100 years ago. With all the advances in modern medicine, we've gained maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years at best. And these may not always be quality years, right? Okay. And we talked about the idea that a lot of these changes that have happened in the American healthcare and disease care system have to do with developments in 1970, when America changed its diet. We moved from whole foods to processed foods. We moved from potatoes to potato chips. We talked about that, from oats to Oreos, and from water to soda pop, right? And with that, we became focused on profiteering from these junk foods. And we became hooked on this, and most of us didn't even recognize it. True, isn't it? So then I come along, and I'm kind of the bad guy because I'm pointing the finger at you. Didn't you know this? Didn't you know this? No, you didn't, because we slithered into that. The culture changed subtly, and we became all part and parcel of that. We talked about the significant increase in the sugar consumption from 2 teaspoons now to 30 teaspoons per day. We talked about that most of the sugar is found in soda pop. we talked about, several other things, bananas. And then we talked about what happened to corn. Corn, we turn into corn oil. And the people don't realize that it takes 14 years of corn to produce 1 tablespoon of corn oil. How easy it is to get 1 tablespoon of corn oil, how difficult it would be to get that in the form of real corn. You have to eat 14 years of corn. And once you have the corn oil, well, then you have, of course, corn chips. You have all the sweet nothings that are out there. The cakes and the pies. There's always oil and sugar, fat and sugar. It's always the same thing. And then some chemicals to make it like a taste sensation, and you're hooked. We talked about the potato chips, right? Were you astounded yesterday when I said to you, you can have 1,000 calories in corn chips that you can eat in what time period? You just inhale them. They're gone. And then you run out of corn chips, and you have to, or potato chips, and you have to eat real potatoes. You have to eat 10 potatoes to get 1,000 calories that you could eat in no time in terms of potato chips. Eat potatoes. And yet, when you talk to people that say, oh, I cannot eat potatoes. Potatoes are fattening. Right? They're starched. You can't do it. And societies that don't have heart disease, societies that don't have obesity, they're all living on a starch-rich diet. But it's unrefined starch as it comes in nature, not white flour. We're all clear on that one, right? And so, we begin to realize that we got hooked taste-wise because there's a pleasure center in the brain that becomes activated when you have enough sugar, when you have enough salt, when you have enough fat, you're stuck. And we point our finger at some of these overweight people and say, why don't they have a little bit more willpower and push away from the table? It's not that easy. There's an aspect of addiction that is inserted into these products because many of these modern junk food products are produced by the tobacco industry. Philip Morris. Yeah. They know they're in trouble with tobacco, so they shift to junk food. So there it is, salt, sugar, and fat. It's an outstanding book, a chilling story of how a processed food industry is making a fortune by slowly poisoning an unwitting population. No, I'm not doing so badly. I'm doing okay. Really? Our taste buds have become corrupted over time. We're not even realizing that we're living on a diet that's very, very sugary and very salty and very fatty. And so that's why we're going to start today the Jumpstart program, where we're putting you on a very, very simple, fundamental diet. You're going to be shocked, John. I told Angela about it yesterday. She's preparing you for it, I'm sure. Starting today, tomorrow, only grains, whole grains, and fruits, right? So we'll have a special presentation later on today where we try to help you to detoxify the system. And after a week's time, when you go back to some of your original food, you say, my goodness, is it ever sweet? Can hardly take it. I mean, I used to love this ice cream, but it's too sweet. I used to have a little bit of salt. I loved it. But this is like a salty brine solution. My goodness, how can anybody eat this stuff? And you used to eat it a week ago. You were going to kill for it. And so we talked about the idea that today, almost 50% of the calories that we eat have no nutritional value. They're just addictive substances to make the manufacturers wealthy and us healthy, poor in health. So there were two shifts in nutrition in America. The one shift was in the 1970s, 1950s, 1970s, where we shifted from foods to products. potatoes, potato chips, right? Second shift was last 100 years. As we increased our consumption of animal products, we almost doubled the consumption of animal products. And I mean, maybe some of you were surprised. I mean, I was when I saw that for the first time, that American meat eating people consume 12 cows plus 25 hogs plus 2,400 chickens. And then there was a gentleman here and said 2,001 chicken, it's probably more like 8,000 for me. That's just an average. Remember? So it's amazing what has happened in our culture, that we're killing 1 million animals every hour in this country to feed the gullet here. And it's harming us health-wise. And yet people have the idea, well, I've got to have some protein somewhere. As a matter of fact, on the test you will see, most of us take in 2 times the amount of protein that the medical society recommends we should have. And we're still thinking we need more protein. That was one of the most often missed questions when I ask, how do you best lose? No, what was the question there? How do I gain muscle? Yeah, eat more protein. Folks, you don't gain muscle in the kitchen. No. Where do you get the muscle?
Working out.
Yeah, work it out in the gym, right? On the tracks. And that was the most often asked question. People still have the idea I build muscle because I eat more protein. You don't need more muscle. You don't need more protein. What you need is more calories, but not from protein. You should eat more starchy foods, more grains, more groats, or some of these kind of things. And that's what gives you the energy to do the workout. And through the workout, you build the muscle. Okay. I mentioned to you yesterday that when it comes to sirloin steak, that's 25% protein and 75% fat. All these animal products that we think are high in protein, they're all high in fat. Okay. Most of our fat comes from meat, poultry, fish, and dairy. But you can also get a lot of fats coming in from salad oils, shortening, and margarines. Now, remember we talked about the hot dog. What's the percentage of fat in a hot dog? Don't look. Oh, it's... Yeah, 85% fat, hot dog, right? And you think, well, I've got to have a hot dog to get my protein. Well, it's just 15%. It's just junk. Sorry. When they cannot sell the meat, they turn it into a hot dog. You should really pray for forgiveness. And please note, when it comes to these processed foods like hot dogs and hamburgers, sausages, the World Health Organization said these processed meat foods are actually carcinogens. They're causing cancer, just like smoking is causing lung cancer. So these processed foods are causing colon cancer. So let's be aware of this. And then they talk about, in general, meats per se are probably, they say, they are very cautious about this. They said they're probably also causing cancer. When it comes to processed meat, that's established. We can actually give you a mathematical formula that tells you, depending on how much processed meat you eat, the likelihood that you have in such and such a time colon cancer. We have relationships, mathematical relationships there, based on the amount. And then we talked about the cheese is about 70% fat, and cheese is one of the most addictive foods you can possibly have. Once you got it into your system, it's hard to get out. I was born close to the Dutch border in Germany, and we would get, after the war, 100 grams. That's just a little bit of cheese, but and we knew the cheese, different kinds from different cities, Gouda and Edam and so on. We could tell, we had the taste identification. It was such a special treat. And then I come to America, cheese is everywhere. I mean, all you have to do is go to have a pizza, and you can see the cheese. Shh. It's tough. It's tough, but we need to do something about it. And today, we talked about the importance of saturated fat. Saturated fat is the number one cause of causing high cholesterol by doing what? The cholesterol is being produced where in the body? In the liver. So when you eat cheese, when you eat saturated fat, and cheese is the number one source of saturated fat in the American diet, aside from all the other animal products, that's where saturated fat comes from, plus from coconut oil, right? Coconut oil is really very, very, very high in saturation. So coconut oil. So when you eat these kind of saturated fats, they cause the liver to produce excessive amounts of cholesterol, and it's that cholesterol that gets into the bloodstream, aside from the blood cholesterol that you eat, and that then overwhelms the body, and the cholesterol settles down inside the arteries and begins to clog them up and narrows them down. Wow. That's the problem. And diabetes accelerates that process. When you have diabetes, you are sitting duck for atherosclerosis. You're sitting duck for renal disease. You're sitting duck for amputations. You're sitting duck for blindness. It's all there. And some of you folks, you don't seem to understand what that means. You say, well, I have some diabetes. I'll take some insulin. Folks, it doesn't do any good. You will die from diabetes regardless of how many medications you take. And you will take more medications every year and trying to sort of keep it down a little bit, but it doesn't work fully. But you can turn it down in 3 weeks if you make the change and move towards a simple diet where you have unrefined starchy foods. That's exactly the opposite what they tell you in the dietetic office. They say no starch because it turns into sugar, and sugar turns into diabetes. Folks, when you have unrefined starch, it has fiber with it. Fiber is packing the product, and the fiber slows down everything. It doesn't turn into sugar very rapidly. It does it very slowly, and it gives you the energy that you need. As a matter of fact, we can take populations around the world. They're living on a 70, 80, 90% starch diet, no diabetes. But it's unrefined starch. Are you with me there? I mean, if you don't get anything out of the lecture today, that's I want you to take home. And once you understand this, you don't have to worry about keto diets and low carbohydrate diets and high carbohydrate diets and low fat and high fat. Don't worry about all these things. It's just a natural diet. By the way, what's the best fat that we should have? You're fired. What's the best fat? There is no good fat. Regardless of any kind of fat, every kind of fat is 9 calories per gram. Right? Are you with me? What about olive oil? It's 15% saturation, 9 calories per gram. You go to beef tallow, that's 50% saturated fat, it's 9 calories per gram. You go to butter, that's 63% saturation, 9 calories per gram. You go to palm oil, it's 78% saturation, 9 calories per gram. You go to coconut oil, it's 92.5% saturated fat, 9 calories per gram. What's the best fat to have? The one that you don't eat, right? They had this big discussion in the American Heart Association. They said, What about coconut oil? Because coconut oil came on the market, and with big fanfare, with big marketing, it's clean, it's white, it's pure, it comes as nature designed it, and everybody said, this is it, and it tastes good, and it smells good, it's it. Cheap to produce. In Malaysia, Indonesia, cheap. They can put a lot of money into marketing, and so they swappered the market, and people bought coconut oil. 92% saturation. Saturated fat is usually solid. When you take a bottle of coconut oil, what's on top? Is it solid? It's always white. It's solid. Right? Saturation. The most saturated fat that there is. So they ask the American Heart Association to give an assessment of what shall we do with coconut oil. And they had a big meeting, 2-day meetings, all the scientists were there, and they said, this is the answer. We recommend coconut oil. To put on your scalp and your skin, never in your mouth. Got it?
Yeah.
I felt relieved. And even today, people always think, oh, coconut oil is the way to go. Folks, it's not. It's very deceptive. Avocado oil is fine. Yeah. But again, it's 9 calories per gram. But its saturation is very low. Okay. Yeah, you can use some of that too. In general, we want you to just think in terms of using small amounts of oil and try to get away from frying and all these kind of things. We'll teach you all of this step by step, okay? We also talked about that probably 60% of the calories that we eat in America today is refined food. Only 7 to 10% of the food that we eat today in America comes from food as it occurs in nature. Coming with the hand of a master designer. 90%, it wasn't really apparently made for that purpose. And then we wonder why we're living in a diseased society. We're spending 86% of our medical budget in this country on managing the symptoms of chronic disease without being able to turning it off. We have no cure, we just manage. And everybody's happy. We're managing, we'll see you back in 3 months. The doctor says, come and see us in 3 months. In the meantime, take my pills and we'll check it out in 3 months again. And you're stuck for life. No cure. Infectious disease is different. If you have some infectious lung disease, if you have pneumonia, don't come to me and ask me, how much broccoli should I eat? No. You get your antibiotic and in 10 days it's gone. But not when it comes to these chronic diseases. Chronic diseases are around forever because they relate to our lifestyle, how we eat, how we sleep, do we get enough exercise, are we nice people? These are the kind of things that determine that. So let's take a look. Back there, I want to put you on alert. We're going to have a slide, a video coming up, okay? You see, this is the heart, size of a fist. On top of the heart, you see the coronary arteries, okay? The 3 major ones. And they get plugged up. And let me show you what I mean. This is the cross-section of a coronary artery. It's supposed to be wide open, like you see from here, from there, all the way to there. You're wide open. But instead, you have just a small opening here because what's filling it in? Plaque, which is made up of cholesterol, saturated fat, and dead cells. Okay? And that causes a shrinkage of the diameter of your coronary arteries. It's just like your water pipes. When they build up the calcium inside, yeah. That's what happens in the human body. Let me show you a video clip here. It's 2 minutes long. It's one of my favorite clips that I was able to purchase in 1973 when it came out. It's absolutely fantastic. I wanted to do it in a laboratory in the surgical theater once more to bring it sort of up to date a little bit more. No, it's difficult to do. This is an outstanding presentation. Take a look at this. 2 minutes, they will knock your socks off. Next one. Oh. Can we run it?
I first woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight? He said, yes. I said, what did you have? He said, I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake. And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
You want to see it again? Did you see the killer? That is the foundational underlying disease process called athero. It means hardening of the arteries. You're filling up the arteries with the plaque, and it hardens, and they become stiff, and then the blood clot gets stuck. The blood flow is interrupted, and if the blood flow is interrupted to the heart muscle, it can no longer bring oxygenated blood to the heart muscle, and it starves for oxygen, and it's called an infarction, a heart attack, a death. Muscle turns blue. Same thing can happen to the brain. Oftentimes as you develop high blood pressure, you know, when you get your blood pressure to 170, 180, 180, 200, you can have a blowout in the brain. And that's why when we have people that are close to 180, we said, I want you to go to the hospital tomorrow, today, and get some medication immediately. And you say, well, I'm already on 2 medications for blood pressure. Well, get a third one, because this is very dangerous. You are under the likelihood that you can have a blowout of these vessels in the brain. And then the blood spills out there, and it paralyzes everything. Stroke.
I first woke up, so to speak.
This is the underlying disease process you see here. We're born with clean arteries. And then by the time we're 20 years of age, we have 20% narrowing. By the time we're 45 years of age, we have 45, 60% narrowing. By the time you're 70 years of age, you have 90% narrowing. And you see the doctor, and the doctor says, you're doing just fine. You're just as good as Y, and you're getting older, and you're getting better all the time. Wait a minute. He doesn't know that your disease is building up on the inside. It's subclinical. It's underground. It's there. Only when you have about 70, 80%, 90% will you actually begin to get the first pain, which is called angina pain. And when you have angina pain, you should be very grateful Because that means you know that you're in trouble. You better make a change before it takes your life. So when you have angina, you shouldn't ask why. You should ask what. What do I have to learn from this? Oh, my arteries are clogging up. Is there anything I can do to reverse it? Yes, of course. We'll talk about that in the next hour. You can reverse this disease. You can close it, the artery, and you can open it up. It all depends what you put at the end of your fork. Plus, you do some other things. You don't exercise. You don't get your 7-8 hours of sleep. You're in battle with your spouse all the time. Not the way to go. You want to be a happy person. You want to learn. You're here to serve. I read a book last night from an Indian dynasty family that changed the face of India. And they had a motto. This dynasty, this large family with many generations who changed the world in China, in India. And their motto was, service above self. I like that. That's why we do what we do here. I mean, you could have gone to Miami, to Live-In Center. You could have learned these concepts there in 4 weeks. Beautiful spa. $10,000 to $20,000, husband and wife. You could. It's worth it. Or you could come here and you pay $100 or less. And the tests alone that you have before and after are costing you $240 normally. Service above self. So please note, this atherosclerotic process, you see, you can find it all over the body. You can find it up in your brain. You can find it close to your neck. You can find it close to your heart, your kidneys. You can find it close to your legs. You can find it in your penile arteries in men. It's the same process, the same disease. It expresses itself in different diseases, different names, different specialists, but it's all the same basic disease. And if you make some dietary changes, if you make some of the changes that we recommend, you're affecting all these diseases. You don't need a drug for this, and a drug for this, and a drug for this. And so some people have 25 drugs. I mean, they're walking drugstores. They get 10 specialists, and everybody gives the best medication that they think is the best. And all they need to do is really think about, it's one, in many, many cases, it's one underlying disease process because it affects oftentimes the circulatory system, the arteries. They get narrowed down, and the diabetes narrows them further down, and the blood pressure makes it worse. And so when you look at all these diseases, they have different names: myocardial infarction, angina pectoris, cerebral infarction, senility, hearing loss, visual loss, hypertension, gangrene, impotence, claudication, degenerative disc disease. It's all the same potato. It is atherosclerosis. Yeah, okay. And then they said, well, what are the determinants of this disease process called atherosclerosis? And they said, well, we have identified in large studies that these are the predictors of this disease. And the three big ones are LDL cholesterol, high blood pressure, and smoking. These are the three big ones. Cholesterol, and again, some of you missed that question badly on the test. When we ask, what is the number one risk factor for atherosclerosis or heart disease? Many of you wrote down stress and all these kind of things. Stress doesn't do much in terms of heart disease. It only causes you to change your diet. That's true. But stress by itself, if you have a simple diet, it's okay. So we're talking about cholesterol, high blood pressure, and smoking. And then the next one is diabetes. And the next one is obesity and triglycerides. And then on the other hand, you have inactive lifestyle, stress. Yeah. And genetics is not a big factor. The further you go down the list, the less important they are. And when it comes to genetics, you can suppress the gene to express themselves and do harm to you by the way that you make your dietary choices. Diet overrides genes. Your destiny is not determined by your DNA. Your destiny is determined by what you put between your lips. I'll give you an example here. This is a large study done that has been going on for 70 years in Boston, where they took some 5,000 people, they followed them for several generations now, and they found out the people that have the highest cholesterol, like 310, they have high blood pressure, like 160, they are smoking, they have diabetes, and they didn't pass a treadmill test. The chances of a man at the age of 35 to die within 6 years to develop heart disease is 140 times more likely to happen with this red-backed profile in comparison to ideal numbers, cholesterol less than 160, 150, right? Yes. Where you have blood pressures below 140, 120 thereabouts. No smoking, no diabetes, you passed the treadmill test, you did all right. Please note, these are the determinants, and that's why we are going to check that out in 4 or 5 weeks again when we give you the results on June 3. We want to see what happened to your cholesterol. Did it really come down? Not did you take some medication, bring it down. Medication brings it down, but it doesn't do any good for your heart. And yet people come to me sometimes, well, I have normal cholesterol. Are you medication? Yes. Well, hello, sir. Fooled. Right? Or you have a person, and they said, how's your blood pressure? Oh, it's fine, it's normal. Are you on medication? Yeah, on 3 medications. Hello? I mean, what's the pharma industry doing to us? And it's just giving us a false sense of security. Band-Aid, yeah. So just imagine, the likelihood of heart disease to develop in 6 years is 140 times more commonly found in people that have this risk factor profile that I showed you earlier in red there. See. Just to give you some idea of the importance of cholesterol. This is a study done with millions and millions of dollars. They had 300,000 people enrolled in this study for several years, and they followed them very, very carefully. These are some of the best research studies ever done, and they found out in the end, those people who had a cholesterol of 150, when compared to those who had a cholesterol of 300, the people with 300 had 4 times more common coronary death than the people down here. So cholesterol by itself that you measure in your bloodstream is a predictor of coronary death likelihood. And the difference between 300 versus 150 is a 4 times higher likelihood of dying from heart disease. So the point I want to make is the number one factor that drives heart disease is cholesterol in the bloodstream. Okay? But it has to be done by diet, not by drugs. Here's the father of the study, Dr. Jeremiah Stamler. I remember many, many years ago, probably 1980, I introduced him at Loma Linda as the guest speaker for a big symposium, a big conference on heart disease. And, you know, I mean, I was just in awe of this famous man, right? He's just passed away a few months ago at the age of 101. Okay, he practiced what he learned and preached. Here's Dr. Jeremiah Stamler. He said 87% of all of our major coronary events before the age of 65 could be prevented if Americans would do something about their cholesterol to get it down to less than 180 and get their blood pressure down to less than 125. So that's on the questionnaire. 80% of the heart disease could be prevented if we would get our cholesterol levels down. So 80% is preventable in men under 65. By the way, I'm a pretty nice guy. I returned all the test sheets, the questionnaires. I returned them to you, and I marked what the right answers are so that you can study them, so that you have good results next time, and you make me look good as a teacher. Are you with me? So take a look at those tests and go over them a little bit. You know, it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as we learn something from it. That's the point. And then there, Jeremiah Summer, this is going back to 1978. We've known this for many, many years. This is this sometimes called the father of American cardiology. He said, it's reasonable to designate the rich diet as the primary and essential and necessary cause of the current epidemic of atherosclerotic disease. It's essential, it's necessary to have rich diet. Some people say, well, it's the stress, or maybe it's the lack of exercise, or it's that I was born the wrong side of the tracks and so on. No. The number one factor is rich diet. Processed foods, animal products, typical American diet. We call it SAD, S-A-D, SAD, Standard American Diet, a SAD diet. Here's Dr. Goddard from the American Heart Association. He said, 1977, before the Senate, he said, if you have a cholesterol of under 160, it's difficult to find heart disease in societies. And yet, when you look at your, when you looked at your, what is it, the blood sheet that has all the numbers from the laboratory sheet. If you look at your laboratory sheet, it tells you what is the reference number, what should it be, and when you look at cholesterol, it says 200 would be the best way to go. Wrong! I mean, we've known this since 1978, and we're still preaching the old numbers. Are you with me there? What should an ideal cholesterol be? Less than 160. Because in societies where you don't have heart disease, it's usually 90 or 100 or 110, 120. That's what the cholesterol is in societies where you don't have heart disease. And in our society, we say, well, if you have 200, that's okay. Yeah, it's okay if you want to die from heart disease. When I went to school, we were taught up to 300 was normal. So we've done a little better now, but it was still much too high. Because we don't want to agitate the meat industry. It's a big lobby group. We don't want to attack the egg industry. Egg yolks, most concentrated form of cholesterol of any food that we can have. We don't want to attack the sausages. We don't want to attack the cheese. I mean, it's all a matter of playing politics with money. And even the government is not protecting us. It's taking care of itself and its big lobbyists. You know, many of these politicians are largely influenced by monies that they have received. I just learned today that they were building the subway system in Los Angeles many, many years ago in the 1940s. And then Firestone got wind of this, and some other company that are producing rubber things, and they wanted to see the car industry not to be harmed by getting this subway system going, and they made sure that the government would not go for the idea of moving forward and building the subway system in Los Angeles, and it collapsed and nothing happened. And today, we were driving over here today on number 60. When I came to this country, there were 2 lanes. That was a freeway there. Now it's 7, 8 freeways. And still we cannot move along, right? And we could have had a subway system years ago. Who influenced it, that it collapsed? Industry, right? Self-service. Service over self. They don't know this. You know what that means? Greed. This is what we have in our CHIP program. You notice here, these are people that come into our program for 30 days. Notice here they have a drop in cholesterol by 20% in less than 30 days. You don't have to go on medication. And you spend $1,000 a year for your statin drugs, and you have to worry about side effects. 20% of the people have side effects. They have muscle pains. The doctors have to take them off immediately, and it perhaps even may contribute to mental deterioration and diabetes. This is what we're beginning to understand more and more now about these statin drugs. And we just blindly take them. Oh, it brings the cholesterol down. Folks, it's not the way to go. Well, can we produce heart disease? We can take monkeys. Now, all we give these monkeys is a typical hospital diet. That's all you have to do. And in 2 years, the monkeys will have died of massive myocardial infarctions, heart attacks. They don't die from heart disease in nature. But you put them on a hospital diet, gone, 2 years. Then they did the same experiment, and they took many, many monkey colonies, and they gave them different diets. First, they produced the disease process with an American hospital diet, and then they put them on a very simple diet, different simple diets. And guess what happened? When you gave them the original monkey diet, lots of bananas and whatever they eat, in less than 2 years, the plaques had begun to open up, to shrink, and the arteries began to open up again. We can do it in monkeys. We can do it in many, many different animal species. They've done this with roosters. Wow. I mean, it's amazing. Please note, when we talk about the cause of these common diseases, this is the summary that comes from Harvard University. These are all researchers at Harvard, Dr. Stamford, Dr. Platts, Dr. Hugh. This is all 2000, and they said, our data is very, very clear from large studies done over tens and tens of years, that 70% of stroke is totally avoidable, 71% of cancer is avoidable, 82% of heart disease avoidable, preventable. Remember, in the test that we give you, when you look at 80% of heart disease is avoidable, preventable. And when it comes to diabetes, 91% of diabetes is preventable. All I have to do is do the opposite what the dietitian tells you to do. I'm sorry to say. Or what some dietitians tell you to do. Here's the American Health and Human Services Secretary. This is the man in charge of health in America. This was 2004. He said our nation's largest killer diseases are largely lifestyle related and can therefore be prevented and delayed. They're not prevented by vaccines or cured by pills and procedures. They're largely an extension of our health damaging behaviors. Our use of tobacco, lack of exercise, and our rich diet. Are you with me? Folks, I'm not telling you that. I'm just quoting you some of the best people that we have in our country, around the world. Libraries are filled with this information. Here's the former Surgeon General. I remember him very well too. He died at the age of 98 a few years ago. See, these people, they practice what they taught. And he said, 2 out of 3 adult Americans, one personal choice seems to influence long-term health prospects more than any other. What we... Are you with me? What are you going to put at the end of your fork? It's a matter of life and death. It really is. And every fork counts. One time is none time? We have to begin to understand the body has to put up with this. And the body is very resilient. It kind of does its best. But once you have reached that special inflection point, it may be too late for you. And then even one digression may not be in your best interest. This is Loma Linda. You've heard of the blue zone? What does the blue zone mean? I had a lady, she did really, really well. She had heart disease. She had 7 bypasses. She had medications. It was a terrible situation. And then she came into a CHIP program in Chicago. And then over the next year, she just got all of her medications. She did really, really well. And I said to her, Madam, would you be willing to fly? If I fly you to Loma Linda, would you come? You can fly to Ontario. I pick you up there. We have a big convention in Loma Linda, the CHIP convention and national convention. I want to feature you in the blue zone. You know what blue zone mean? What does blue zone mean, sir? What does blue zone mean?
Where people live longer than the rest.
Yeah, exactly right. That's where people live that are 100 years of age. Long living people. Exactly right. So this is the blue zone, right? And I said to her, I want to feature you in the blue zone. I fly you out there, and do you need to have someone to fly with you, or can you do it on your own? She was an elderly lady, but she was really good, strong. And I pick her up at the airport, and we come to the big auditorium, and she said, Sir, I need to just change. Just give me a couple of minutes. I said, fine. When she comes out of the bathroom, in a blue dress. She didn't know that the blue zone, what that really meant. She didn't know what you knew. She just thought, in Loma Linda, you have to wear blue. Blue means people are 90, 100, 110 years of age, like these people here. Yeah, this is my neighbor, Dr. Wareham. He's 104 years of age. He was still doing bypass surgery at 95 in Los Angeles. He would drive 3 times a week to Los Angeles. He said, I did it for 20 years. I never had a fender bender. 94 years of age. And then you see this lady, Marge. She's 106 years of age there. She still goes to gym every morning. And there was a fellow by the name of Dan Buettner from the National Geographic. He wrote the book on blue zones. And he came to Loma Linda to interview people in Loma Linda for his book. And so he made an appointment with Marge. He got to her house, and she said, look, I'm in a hurry. Just get in my car, and we can talk in the car. You can interview me there, because I have some things to do. She's 106, right? He gets into the car, pink Cadillac. And he's frightened for his life. He begins to pray for mercy. And he said, how come you're in such a hurry? He said, look, I'm a volunteer. I have to take care of all these people. They're waiting for me. 106, service above self. Scaring him to death. That's her. That's Dan Buettner right there. Okay. So what do these blue zones have in common? You can see this. There are 5 different countries, areas in the world where people are the longest living people, and Loma Linda is one of those. Actually, people have the idea that if you move to Loma Linda and buy some real estate there, then you're going to live forever. It doesn't work that way, because they have found that it's the Adventist lifestyle that's anywhere in the world. There's some 20 million Adventist people around the world. And wherever Adventist people are, and they study them, they always live 10 to 15 years longer than the native people in that area. So what do they have in common? Adventists, I'm not making a push here for Adventism, but I'm telling you what the Adventist lifestyle is. You don't have to become an Adventist, but you need to practice the lifestyle of an Adventist. That means no smoking, okay? No alcohol, okay? Or preferably as little as possible. Okay. It also means that you take a mini vacation once a week, 1 day a week. Go to church, right? So these are three things that they do. And when you go to church, like they do fairly religiously, not just on Easter and Christmas, but every week, you develop a fellowship there. You have support systems, right? So when you have your personal struggles, there's always someone that you can talk to. I mean, that's stress management. That's mental health. So these are four things. Well, something else the Adventists do here. Take a look here. They believe in, like the other societies do, whole grains, soya beans, plant-based diets, moderate activity, social engagement, and Adventists always eat some nuts. Adventists are nuts over nuts. But they always say it should only be a small handful of nuts or almonds. Okay? Don't overdo it because a lot of calories there, but use a small amount because they're good, nutritious foods. Some nuts every day. So this is the Adventist lifestyle. Blue zone. So, also, these blue zones, usually they push legumes, beans. And I tell people all the time, eat beans, beans, beans. They're nutritious, fabulous. And then they always come to me after and say, sir, have you ever heard that they're antisocial? I said they're only antisocial because these beans, among other things, have a lot of fiber. And when you are on a low fiber diet, which is the American diet, and now you go to beans, hello? Who did this? No, so that's why we recommend introduce beans or, fiber in general gradually, and you will have no problem. Your boss will no longer ask you to open the windows. It's going to be okay. Also, when you have a lot of fiber, you have a very easy propulsion. It goes down quite nicely. It's like a big sweeper. It's pushing everything out. You go in, you go out, you're done. You don't sit there for half an hour and it's gone. If you go in, you go out, and you're done, then you know you have enough fiber and you drink enough water. That's the way it's supposed to be. Okay. Any questions on this? I know it's a very delicate subject to talk about. But yes. Soya beans are causing problems for men? Oh, they develop breasts? No, that's what they talk about. Nothing to it. Forget it. All you have to do is go to China. People live on soya beans. They have no breast cancer. They have no estrogen problems. They have no enlarged breasts in men. It's just something. We dream up these things in order to protect some other industry. But I appreciate the question. That's a common question that is being asked because we introduce these ideas to create uncertainty and confusion. You should not be worried about this. Just think about in China, 1.2 billion people, soybeans are big time. Any problems among women and men about these areas? No. That gives us some ideas. Okay? So thank you. Anybody else? Yes. No. Oh, we're not talking about soya products. Soya products are, I understand, soya products are refined foods. When we talk about soya beans, we say eat soya beans edamame, for instance, or, cooked soya beans, or soya milk is okay, but soya products, these refined meat substitutes, well, use them just in small amounts as a flavor enhancer. Okay, would that help you? So now we come to the Adventist Health Study. The government has given $25 million to the university here in Loma Linda to study why do Adventists have the blue zone characteristics. Why do they live so much longer? Why do Adventists live 10, 15, 18 years longer than the population in California? Here's the first study that we did in Loma Linda. This was done in the 1970s, 38,000 people. Actually, 25 ended up in the end with this. They found that the Adventist meat eaters, you have to understand, Adventists are not all vegetarians. People have this idea. Half of the Adventists are not vegetarians. Half of the Adventists are meat eaters. I mean, the church sort of recommends a vegetarian lifestyle, but they don't say you have to. And so half of the people choose not to follow the recommendation. They just do what they want to do. So then you have another group of Adventists that are lacto-ovo vegetarians. What are these people like? What does that mean, lacto-ovo? Lacto means dairy. And ovo means eggs. So these are Adventists that don't eat meat, but they eat eggs and dairy products, right? These are called lacto-vegetarians, and that's a pretty good size of the Adventist population. And then there's a small group of people that are pure vegetarians. No lacto, no ovo, just plant-based, right? Now, so they looked at these three different groups, and look what they found. They found that the Adventists that were meat eaters had 64% of the deaths that you expected in Californians. In comparison to the pure vegetarian Adventists, they only had 23%. So the meat-eating Adventists had 3 times more coronary deaths than the pure vegetarians. You want to live longer? What's the conclusion? Move towards, right? Move towards the green color, right? You say, well, how come? The Adventist meat eaters, they had only 64% when compared to the typical Californian population. How are the Adventists different from the general population? They don't smoke. Does that give you less heart disease? Yeah. They don't use alcohol, so they have probably fewer traffic accidents. Right? But particularly smoking is a big factor here that reduces the likelihood of heart disease in Adventists that are meat eaters. But if you move towards vegan or vegetarianism, you have the best results. Please take a look here. They now compare in the red bar, these are Adventists that are meat eaters. And then compare this, here you see it again, they compare them with lacto-ovo vegetarians. This is not comparing meat eaters with vegetarians, but meat eaters with lacto-ovo vegetarians. You got it? And please note, the lacto-ovo only have 45% of the expected problem with high blood pressure. They only have about 65% of the expected risk of arthritis. They also only have 65% of the expected prostate cancer. They only have 55% of the expected colon cancer. Are you getting some idea here? Meat is not really helping you to take care of those special killer diseases, do they? Meat promotes prostate cancer. Meat promotes colon cancer. Meat promotes high blood pressure. Meat promotes arthritis. And folks, when I talk about meat, I talk about fish too. I'm sorry. I mean, I know I lose some friends here among my Filipino people here, because I know that means a lot to you to have that culturally food, fish and chicken. Folks, it's not in your best interest. Look, I know the struggle. My wife is a Filipina. It took me 10 years of gentle caressing and hiding the fish until she finally got the idea. Yeah, I will no longer look for the eyes of the fish, which is a delicacy among those Filipino people. Right? It was a culture shock for me. But it's okay. It's all taken care of. We've been living for 52 years together now, happily. And we have been vegetarians for 35 years. So, just be patient when you have some of these culturally correct foods that are not in your best interest. You know what I'm talking about, right? Because I cannot tell you what to do. I can only plead with you. Let it happen from within, where you make the decision from within. I don't really need those fish eyes anymore. I don't need those. What about those eggs in the Philippine culture? Balut. Balut. I'm back home in the Philippines with my in-laws, and it's daylight. It's dark, and by our house there's a man walking by. Balut, 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 and my father-in-law says, "Oh, Hans, you need to try this balut. This is a special delicacy." I said, "What is it, Dad?" He said, "Oh, it's chicken. I mean, it's not quite chicken yet, but it's in the process. It already has some of the little feathers inside the egg, and it's very soft. You need to do." I said, "Dad, you want me to eat this?" "We want you to be like a Filipino." I said, "Dad, I can't do it." I said, "Please, Dad, be nice to me about this issue." I mean, you already tried to seduce me with these, what is it, the durian. That wasn't my thing either. So now I'm backing out from balut. And he said, "Look, you got to try it. We can turn the lights off." I said, no, I can't do it. Okay, so now I'm going to close now here, pretty close. This is the large Adventist health study that started in 2002. Was a 7-year study where they followed some 100,000 Adventists here in North America. And they followed them very carefully. They have they know exactly how they eat, how they live, their hospitalizations, their death. They know everything about these people. They followed them up. They are just an open book to these people. And here's what they found. They found that the Adventist people that were meat eaters, the red bar, they usually weigh 40 pounds more, these are the women, than the vegetarian women. What are we saying? Adventist women that are meat eaters, on the average, weigh 40 pounds more than Adventist women that are vegetarians, plant-based oriented. Why do you think that is? Because meat is high in fat. That means it's high in calories, right? That's one of the big factors. Cheese, 70% fat. It was.
Yep, it was.
Did you hear that?
Oh, no, it was.
Can you say that loud?
Yeah, sharp cheddar cheese was my weakness. And ribeye steak.
And what is that now? It's all past tense.
It's all past tense, yes. It's May 28th, nothing. That's it, get rid of cheese. Yep.
What's the question? How do you get rid of cheese? Give it to old school. He knows what to do with it. Give it to the poor people that need something to eat. And you say, you're going to kill those people? No. They just need to have some calories for right now. We clean them up later on. Really. That's what we used to do in one of our projects in Chicago. We had huge amounts. People, they emptied their refrigerators, their shelves. I mean, and they recorded everything. We had a competition who would bring the most junk food into the center. And then we would call up the social service and we said, "We got another truckload of food coming for you. Can you pick it up?" "Yes." "We have chocolates," all of these kind of things that our people no longer want to eat. Please, Come and pick it up. Yeah. They were grateful. Service above self. Then they look at men. And here again, wait. Adventist men that are meat eaters weigh about 193 on the average for that particular height. And then the Adventists that are men that are vegetarians, they're 30 pounds, is it 32? Yeah, 30 pounds lighter. So again, men and women, those that are meat eaters have much more weight to worry about than those that are more plant-based oriented. I mean, you know, you can eat a lot of big salad. You can eat tons of salad. Will you gain weight? No, you're going to shrink away, right? Unless you pour a lot of dressing on it, right? Then look at diabetes. These are Adventist meat eaters. These are Adventists that are eating chicken. These are Adventists that are eating fish. These are Adventists that are eating beef, right? They're eating cheese, these kind of things. Take a look. Here are the Adventists. 6.3% of these people are diabetics. They became diabetics in 7 years. And here there's the vegetarians, only 1.6% became diabetics. So that you see there's a fourfold difference. So Adventist meat eaters on the average have 4 times as much diabetes that they develop over the next 7 years. Yes?
Do you know what the original sample piece was as far as the
100,000.
100,000? Okay.
96,500 to be exact. Okay. People with high blood pressure. Look at this. These are Adventists that are meat eaters. 19% develop in the next 7 years high blood pressure problems on medication. Those that are vegetarians, only 5%. What's the difference here? Fourfold. Adventist vegetarians have 1/4 the amount of high blood pressure problems as the people that are meat eaters. I mean, I'm not here to put meat eaters into an unfavorable light, but I just want you to know there are some dangers associated with consuming meat. And you need to, I just want to be sure that you know that I'm giving you a choice to think about when you go home, right? I mean, you can do what you want. I mean, I hope you don't, but it's really up to you. I have no control over this. I'm only trying to open up the curtains so that you can make a change that you want to make. And then what about cholesterol? Here again, Adventist meat eaters, they have 15% of the people develop high cholesterol on medication versus vegetarians only 3%. That's a 5-fold difference. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised that some of the vegetarian Adventists are actually on some medication for high cholesterol. It's probably because their physicians are pushing it on them. Sometimes there's a tendency to do that. And sometimes you can have a saturated fat diet. You can be vegetarian, and still you can have some of these saturated fats, and they can push the cholesterol up, right? So you can be a vegetarian and have a high cholesterol. Now this is one of the founders of the Adventist Church who in 1863, through a vision, Adventists believe, was informed and recommended to the church people, we should really move towards a simple diet, a diet that was designed by God. And she said, I saw in my vision many sickly among the church members who made themselves so by indulging their appetites. Hello? If we want good health, we must take special care of the health that God has given us. We must deny the unhealthy and perverted appetite. You cannot say it much clearer, can you?
That was back in
1862, 63. Perverted appetite. See, we have become perverted in our appetites without realizing it. And that's why we're going to talk about a Jumpstart program today, to get you detoxified. This is a big study that just came out, a huge study, and they said you can avoid 50% of the diabetes and heart disease if you do the following things. Here's what you have to do to avoid 50% of the diabetes and heart disease. It says, increase the amount of fruit by 3 times. Loida, how much fruit? 3 times more fruit. Eat more fresh fruit. Number 2, increase vegetables and legumes and beans by 2 to 4 times. Do you remember I said to you, eat beans, 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 beans? This is science. Next one, increase whole grains by, what does it say? What does it say? What does it say? 6 times. Eat whole grains. That means become a starch eater. 6 times more often you should eat whole grains. This is science. This doesn't come from me. It doesn't come from some vegetarian club. No. And this doesn't come from the grain industry either. These are scientists. They're meat eaters, but they're scientists. And said, if you really want to cut back on heart disease and diabetes by 50%, increase grains by how many times? 6 times. Groats. Did you try some of the groats this morning? Not yet? Right. I had some this morning. I loved it. Okay, then, but they said, so increase fruits, vegetables, and legumes, nuts and seeds, which means avocados, and whole grains, and then decrease meats big time. They recommend no more than 3 ounces of beef or meat a week. No more than 3 ounces of fish a week. You know how much 3 ounces is? It's not worth it. Don't even bother. Let it go. Then they talk about processed meat. What do they recommend for processed meat? Let's take a look. Processed meat, 0. Sugary beverages, 0. I mean, I know there are people, they're drinking soda pop, and they say, well, it's diet soda pop. Folks, that's not the best thing either. Soda pop is not going to help us if it's even diet. It fools the brain. We're suckers. We're wasting money. We're wasting God's resources. Preach? Okay. Let me get off that. Okay, and what about sodium? What do they recommend sodium? Cut the sodium into half. Didn't we talk about that yesterday too? Cut the sodium in half. Yeah. So this is coming from the big scientific studies, and so this is just a very simple. You have seen this before. On the left side that's what Americans usually do. Meat, dairy, eggs, processed foods, and sodium, alcohol, caffeine, and soda. On the other hand, we should be moving towards these kind of foods, and that is more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, more legumes, some nuts and seeds, lots of water to drink. And when you do this, then you have the best health up here versus the worst health out there. Where do you want to be? You want to be here? You want to be here? And you say, sir, I cannot make that change. It's too radical. I understand. Then don't do it. Why don't you just move? Begin to move gradually from here. Move in this direction. There. You get here. You determine the speed when you want to get there. You know what your health issue is. You're in a crisis. Don't move slowly. Your blood pressure is at 200. You better do something radically. And especially if it's that high, you better see a physician right away. So please remember, you are determining the speed. Okay, here's the last point for the test. It's estimated that 80% of chronic disease and premature early dying is preventable by making some changes in diet and lifestyle. Folks, I'm not recommending that you make some little changes. Don't fool around with it. It's not worth it. Either you do it or you don't. What we are teaching you here is not for mamby-pambies. This is not for weak people that say, yeah, I used to have 10 eggs a week. I cut down to 6. No, that's not the way to go. Oh, I used to have fish 3 times a week. I'm going to have it now only once a week. No. If you know this is the best way to go, cut it. It's gone. And you're no longer being tempted a little bit, just a little bit. No, you made this, you drew the line in the sand, you covered it, it's gone. I'm not even discussing it anymore. I don't need this anymore. Yeah, I used to watch pornography regularly, but I'm just doing it now once in a while. Well, come on. That's not the way to go. You cut it. Otherwise you get back drawn into it again. Oh, you know this, right? But you get my point? Don't play with it. It's hard to resist these taste sensations. It's hard. Especially when you're emotionally involved in something, you eat with emotions. If I just had that chocolate right now, I would be okay. And then people come to me and say, well, you talked about how to prevent it. You came too late for me. I already have prostate cancer. I already have heart disease. I already have high blood pressure. I'm already taking 5, 6, 7 different medications. Too late for me. Sorry. What's the answer? What's the answer, Nick? You can reverse these diseases that you cannot reverse with medication or procedures. You can reverse chronic diseases within days. Blood sugars come down within 3 to 4 days, and you have to reduce the insulin and have your doctor on the phone and say, doctor, I'm kind of feeling a little bit shaky because I'm in hypoglycemia. My blood sugar is too low. What are you doing? Well, I'm following some program. What are you doing? Well, I cut my meat out and my fats. And so, well, I don't know about this. But doctor, what shall I do? Well, reduce your insulin by about 5 units and call me back in a couple of days. And then you call back and say, it's further going down. I'm still shaking because the diet kicks in more and more and more. And within 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, the diabetes can be gone, period, for some people. I mean, I'm talking to you about a revolution here. And I'm trying to bring the science to you in a way so that you begin to realize that this guy is not some kind of an idealist, or he's having some fantasies or something, or he just has he's on some kind of a kick. No, I've been doing this for 35 years. We have had 110,000 people that have made those changes, and I know what happens to these people. I'm just passing it on to you. And no $10,000 bill. Service above self. I'm just not talking about myself. I'm talking about Shane and the team of people here from the Adventist Haven Church that have committed themselves to bringing this kind of a concept to you. I'm talking about the pastor who has committed himself and his church to making this kind of a program available to you. I'm talking about Betty, who is here with us today, who came from Rancho Cucamonga, which is what, about 45 minutes? An hour and 10 minutes? Okay. People are service-oriented above self. She's never sent me a bill. I've never sent the pastor a bill. Shane has never sent the pastor a bill. We are here because we want to reach out to you. That's why Cheeto was singing this afternoon with this group of people there spontaneously, that special little song, right? Hey, it's part of sharing the joy. So let's have a 5-minute break and then we'll come back. Okay? We'll see you in 5 minutes.